right now just trying to mock up the wheels. We're using aftermarket wheels on the Corvair. So we have to get them all set up so that they're at the right track, which is the width. This is the track of the car. So we have to make sure that they're at the right track so that they're not sitting too wide apart in the body and not too far, not too close to the edge of the fender, much like the real car. So what I did was let's just pull this out. I had to enlarge the axle opening here. Now these wheels, the wheel centers are much wider than the stock wheels. So I couldn't use the original axle. So I made an axle here by taking a piece of styrene rod and a cutout from a styrene sheet, a circle that would fit into the wheel opening. Now I just glued that to the end of the styrene rod and I have my axle. And then I just passed the axle through the wheel. And there we have our axle. Now, for the wheel backs, these tires are from Pegasus model products. They make great wheels, tires, all sorts of accessories for model kits. And these tires are rubber tires. They have an insert here that is your white wall. And they came on a different set of wheels, but since these are the wheels I need to use for this kit, as they resemble my buddy Dave's wheels, and I had them painted with a black, gloss black undercoat, and then a chrome paint from Alclad, which really gives a great finish there. Now what I had to use for the wheel backs, these are from the Monogram Miami Vice Daytona Spider, or later released as just a Daytona Spider. And these wheel backs fit perfectly in these wheels. I mean, in these tires. So these are the ones that I'm going to use. Now, these are from the original Miami Vice kit, which were molded in black. This is from the reissue, which are molded in red. Now, my problem now is getting the correct offset on the wheel backs for this car. As for the front, this taller portion of the wheel back is fine because there's more room, as there is a narrower track for the chassis in the front than there is in the rear. If you take a look there, you can see how much narrower the front is than the rear, because the rear is where the engine is. So this, along with this axle, keeps it give me the ability to create an adjustable track on this car based on how I put the axle, and then I can just make a spacer to hold it at the dimension that I want. Now, unfortunately, I can't do that for the rear, and that means that as the rear has an axle that protrudes through the spindle and the strut. Now, what I can use is these wheel backs, and what I have to do now is adjust the height of the wheel back so that it sits a little closer to the inside of the suspension assembly and brings the wheel a little closer into the body, like so. Now, my only issue is that since I put metal coil springs in here, I'm limited as to how far in I can go. Where I've already done this wheel back, and it's brought me in pretty much as far as I can go, as I'm almost up against a spring there. Probably could come in a hair more. So it's just going to take a bit of cutting and sanding in order to get the width that I want. So let's put this in the wheel. And let's do a dry fit here. And here we have the rear tire tucked nicely within the body. The track is still a bit wider than it should be, but it does tuck nicely within the body, so the wheels are not sticking out too far. And that was my issue with them at their regular height, is that they would stick out of the body too far. So what I did was shorten that stem there, and you can see the difference between the unaltered one. You can see how tall that is compared to the altered one. So now I just have to shrink down the other one, and we'll be ready to mount our rear tires. So I'm just going to take another wheel back, since I have an extra Daytona kit, which I've already stolen parts for from my previous build of the Miami Vice Daytona Spider. And we are going to make our adjustments. So sit back while I do my thing here. Might have cut a little too far on this one. Yeah, it's just a little, but let's see if this fits better. Okay, I think this one actually fits better. Here you can see where we have a little blue tack holding the wheel in, and I actually think that this one is much better than the first one. So what we're gonna have to do is sand down the first one a little bit more. Let's see how well it fits on this side, as this side seems to be the side that's a little tighter. Yeah, I think this is going to work. There's definitely a little bit of a difference in how the body sits from one side to the other. But I do believe that I am going to be happy with this one. Let's take a look again. Okay, so let's sand this down a little more so we can get it to match the other one. That's looking a little better. Okay, I'm happy with that there. Okay. I was going to take a little bit of glue to get these straight, but I do believe I'm happy with the wheel track there. As you can see, it tucks in just inside the fender. On both sides. Now the model looks like it is squared, so this is probably something that's inherent in the kit itself, but it does appear to be that it sits closer on one side than it does on the other, suspension-wise. Here is one side, and there is the other side. And I have narrowed the track quite a bit from what it was, and I think I'm going to be happy with that. Let's just pull out a little bit. So I think I'm going to be happy with the track there. All right, so let's get to making another axle. And there we go. We have our next axle done. Let's just try a little test fit of the axle here. Make sure that it's centered, and that is good. Just pull it out before it glues itself to the wheel. So there, our next axle is done. Widening the axle opening, same way we did here. There we go. I went a little bit bigger than I wanted to. I was hoping to keep it a little more snug, but that's okay because it's got very little play in it. That'll work. So now we're going to adjust the axle height. Okay, so now we have one axle and another axle, all good and ready to go. And we will adjust the length of the axles as we're going into the body. So now we have our rear track more or less adjusted right where we want it. Maybe making some minor adjustments here and there as we go along. And are both front axles ready to go. And that is pretty much the modification of the suspension that's going to take place. The wheels aren't going to roll because I'm going to have to glue the rear ones in place. Okay, so here we have all 4 tires installed. I have to shorten these axles because they run into each other. But I knew they were too long. I just better to have too much than too little. But as you can see, I can adjust the track on the front to match the rear so that we can have a pretty close similar track to front and rear. So it should give us a pretty decent looking model, even with all the adjustments. So this is the last really tricky part of this build to figure out, as I'm just trying to get the right stance of the vehicle. Which I think I've pretty much got. So next step is going to be to make the final adjustments and glue the wheels in. And once that's done, then I can get on track to clear coating the body. Just waiting for the weather to warm up a little bit before I attempt to spray the body. But there it is. There's a rough mock-up. Okay, and little Mr. Maddox is making a lot of noise, which you guys can hear. But here is our rough mock-up of the suspension. If I can just get the wheels to sit straight, you guys can actually see what it's going to look like. There we go. That's our actual, that's going to be our ride height. More or less. We may have to make a couple of tweaks here and there, but more or less that's going to be what we'll be looking at as our ride height. Trying to get the most realistic appearance that I can. Alright guys, that's going to be it for now. Just a little update on how I'm going about with modifying the suspension. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Remember, like, subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and tell me what you think, if I've got this right or if I should tweak it some more. I'll see ya on